Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain, and I want to welcome you to this presentation on the AI advantage in modern TMS solutions, presented by Aptean. Quick reminder, there will be an audience question and answer session at the end of this presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now, the transportation management landscape is evolving rapidly, and artificial intelligence is leading the charge in transforming how businesses operate. We've already seen how transportation management systems, or TMS, can streamline processes, improve decision-making, and drive down costs to the point of revolutionizing supply chains worldwide. But when it comes to TMS, what can AI bring to the table? So today, we are going to explore the key advantages that AI brings to modern TMS solutions. We'll talk about industry trends, major challenges, and the game-changing potential of AI. With that, I want to introduce our speakers for today. Jim Endres is Director of Sales for TMS with Aptean. Jim has over 20 years of experience in TMS software industry, specializing in aiding companies to cut costs and enhance operational efficiencies. His expertise extends to private fleet route optimization, planned versus route visibility, proof of delivery, and third-party logistics. Chris Peel is Product Management Director for TMS with Aptean. Chris has over 20 years of experience in logistics software applications, specializing in solution architecture, business intelligence, and process improvement. His expertise also includes consulting and solutions for final mile, LTL, TL, 3PL, parcel, and more. So with that, I want to turn over the presentation to Jim Endres. Jim, take it away.
Thank you very much, Bob. So I'll go ahead and move on. We're going to, jump to a slide ahead there. Sorry about that. We're going to kick it off. Chris and I are going to kind of share the presentation. So Chris, why don't you kick us off with the AI advantage in TMS? Let's talk.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate the intro, Bob. And again, I appreciate the participation from everyone today. And again, everyone's heard of AI, right? But we want to talk a little bit about the advantage of AI in the TMS world. I'm going to start things a little bit different. As I said, you've all heard of AI. It's everywhere these days, from self-driving cars in large cities like Waymo. I was able to experience that in San Francisco last year, all the way through to the development of golf clubs like Odyssey and Callaway, which use AI to design clubs, which, again, by the way, it hasn't helped my golf game much. But again, let's really just talk about what is AI. So if I asked Microsoft Copilot what is AI, the response is, it's the field of computer science focused on creating systems capable of performing tasks that typically require human intelligence. These tasks include learning, reasoning, problem solving, perception, and language understanding. There's a lot of that really tie back into transportation, right? Because if we look at and ask Copilot what a TMS is, it's a software platform designed to help businesses plan, execute, and optimize the physical movement of goods, right? So, it's often part of a larger supply chain system. But when we talk about AI, it's really forcing all companies to think differently these days on all the fronts. It's really transforming the way we live our everyday lives, but especially in the transportation world, right? And that's what we're here to discuss. I was actually reading an article this morning, and they were talking about the University of Plymouth training their students on how to leverage AI in the workforce, right? The goal is to use AI to speed up the processes that they do in their jobs, challenge them, giving, alternative perspectives, right? And that's I thought that was pretty interesting, that phrase of alternative perspectives, because AI is going to transform the way we think about transportation by leveraging a multitude of those alternative perspectives in ways that we can't in the manual world that we've lived in the past, right? So as we look at the business drivers and we start thinking through a lot of those business drivers that are AI for AI in transportation. A lot of those we've been dealing with, and we've been involved in initiatives of those, and we had a goals of fixing some of those things in the past, but a lot of it historically has been manual tasks requiring human interaction for every one of them. Don't get me wrong, there's always going to be the human aspect even with AI, but as we start looking at different things like efficiency, cost savings, smarter decision making, scalability specifically, as we're going to talk more and more about throughout this webinar, we're going to look at how people are going to be able to leverage and augment the activities in the TMS to be able to do more with the same resources that they have, increasing safety, enhancing customer experience. So again, we're going through this, remember all of these drivers, we're kind of at the forefront of figuring out how we've moved away from those manual processes into this next age of AI. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That was well said, and really kind of talks to the business drivers with AI. I did a little research myself and kind of went out to ChatGPT, Copilot, to try to find a couple cool quotes that really talk about AI in TMS from two different perspectives. One is more systems driven, and the other is more real world or theoretical. At the end of the day, if you look at the quote from Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, he states that the age of AI is upon us, and modernizing applications is mission critical. The key word to me there is mission critical to any company's operation today. That's a very powerful statement. It's here, right? Like you said, Chris, AI is here and it's advancing, and it's definitely being embedded into TMS. And really happy to be here to talk about that. Another quote that I found really interesting is from Jason Calacanis. He is an internet entrepreneur from the .com era, angel investor, author, blog host, and many other things. But at the end of the day, he says AI will do for digital what manufacturing in the industrial world did for the physical. So if you really think back to workers using a hammer to get a job done, and now machines are doing that, and they're producing, 100x production. That is what AI is going to do to the digital world, and specifically to TMS. So with that, Chris, I'm going to pass it to the next slide and have you talk a little bit about the industry trends and the different challenges we're seeing.
No, thanks, Jim. Yeah, those quotes are spot on, right? I mean, there's when we start talking about different trends that and again, especially in the technology space, we've gone through the blockchains of the world, which again, some people say fads, and but AI is not a fad. It's it's here to help us, and it's here to help us solve some of these challenges. So again, you're going to notice a common thread throughout this whole webinar, and it's going to be discussing some of those challenges. And AI in our world of logistics is another tool, but not just any tool, right? So as you know, there's a large number of factors that shape logistics that a lot of folks that are on this webinar experience every single day, largely in the way of challenges. I mean, there's that are put in front of us every single day. I don't know about you, but when I was a broker and when I worked for a 3PL, it was just a litany of fires that were put out every single day. Yeah. And finding the most effective and efficient way to put those fires out was very, very important. But key to this is how do we keep those fires from happening? So these range from everything from and again, sorry, we largely all of those challenges range from everything from policy changes that impact freight to environmental or climate change initiatives that are put in front of us. And AI is going to significantly reshape the logistics landscape by automating a lot of these routine tasks to help solve some of these challenges. It's going to enable things like predictive maintenance. It's going to facilitate better decision making through a lot of this data analysis that we're going to be talking about. Um, and again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, those key benefit drivers are at the root of everything that we're talking about. And just to kind of expand a little bit on some of these, let's talk about different, some common challenges that AI can help solve today. In the TMS world, things like carrier selection is a big one. I've been in transportation and TMS for some time, and I understand the complexities of carrier selection. The cheapest carrier is not always going to be the correct carrier. AI can, really turn that on its head and can analyze carrier performance data. It can, help with carrier onboarding. It can help with comprehensive freight audit. And there's just a number of different things that and data points that we look at on a daily basis, especially in the carrier selection side, that AI is going to be able to augment and help make those decisions in a split second. Whereas over and over, it's taking, there's a large part of our day that goes into that whole process. So there's definitely a need for automation and predictive analytics, which are going to factor into, a lot of these things like efficiency and cost reduction, minimizing that manual task and error that can take place with that human interaction. We're going to have improved customer satisfaction, real-time decision-making, enhanced safety and compliance. I mean, so all of these things, are all go into these decision making from an AI perspective. But additionally, the challenges in our future is not just the shortest route based on a set of simple rules. There's going to be different challenges that we're going to need this automation with regards to EV fleet routing. It brings a whole new set of complex algorithms into play that have to consider factors like elevation, wind, traffic. So the automation of all of these different rules are going to be key in helping make a lot of those different decisions that we're going to need to here in the very near future.
Yeah, definitely, Chris. I appreciate you sharing that. When you really think about it, all that automation, the things we do today manually, all the way from rating, routing, and tendering a shipment, all the way through to the end of freight audit and payment, requires a lot of human intervention and time to make those things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's move on and talk a little bit about AI integration in TMS and kind of what that looks like from an evolution perspective. But really, before I go there, Chris mentioned Waymo, right? He actually took a ride and said it was fun. His golf game is still not improved, but hey, that is what it is. But let's go on a little journey here. So imagine a car, right? So you have this car, but better yet, imagine a self-driving car, right? Who'd have thought this would ever come about? But then this car has the ability to sense the road and the things around them and environmental changes and things like that to then decide things like when to stop or when to turn. And all the while this is happening, the system, acts upon this data that's been calculated, right? But who's sitting behind the wheel? A human who could override the decisions of the computer when needed and when wanted, right? So really fundamentally, this is kind of what the AI of integration or the AI integration into TMS looks like. And it's really going to follow kind of a methodical approach. Now, many of us big technology companies have been doing this for years. We're doing it internally within our business practices to offer better service to our customers, and also really to kind of test the waters of this technology before we release it to our customer base. But at the bottom, at the end of the day, it's going to follow this approach of kind of this stepped approach. And step one is really what we call AI assist. That is your always on assistant, ready to help you when needed, to give you the information you need to make the proper decisions. And really what it's doing is combing through millions of data points, both real-time, historic data points, and it helps the staff, whether that be logistics staff in the warehouse, in the dispatch office, in the shipping office, whatever that may be. It'll help them make decisions by providing insights and recommendations or predictions as to how to react to this data and what to do with it. So simply put, what AI Assist is going to do, it's going to just analyze data, provide recommendations. Now, really where the things really start to kick off and start to automate is through what we call task execution. And simply put, rather than make a fancy answer here, but at the end of the day, it executes defined tasks based on that learned data, the predictions, the recommendations, and it will take on those mundane tasks that users do day in, day out, the routine things they do. So again, a simple example, imagine someone in the shipping office that has to execute 10 shipments, and 7 of those things are very routine, regular shipments that happen every day. They might even use the same carrier every day. But today, there's some exceptions or anomalies that have been presented, things like the carrier call doesn't have capacity, their rate has gone up, whatever those reasons are. AI will help analyze that data, provide the recommendation, and then execute based on the right choice for you, the operator. And again, like I said, humans are going to interact with AI, right? They're going to be the co-pilot of AI for years to come. And really, that's going to help us just build efficiencies and automation into the everyday use of these users using a TMS. Again, imagine this example: a CEO comes to you and says, "Hey, by the morning, I want a report of the on-time in full percentage as well as my transportation costs as a percentage of revenue because I have a board meeting." That starts to scramble, and people are running around looking into every system they have to pull the right data. They're either consolidating that through BI or in most cases using Excel, running macros, formulas, pivot tables to produce the right information for that CEO so that he can then present the right information, and information that he's confident in is the key word there. And Chris mentioned earlier how AI will do things at in a split second. And that's what's going to happen here through task execution. And really that leads us to the third step. And that's what we call AI-led workflow. And Chris, why don't you take it from here and kind of talk us through AI-led workflow?
No, absolutely. No, and you're right, Jim. I mean, a lot of what Jim has just discussed. I mean, we've been involved with AI and in some form or fashion in our industry for quite some time now, right? I mean, we've all heard of machine learning, and whether it's taking algorithms and analyzing the data that's already out there and learning from that. From kind of the earlier days of AI all the way through to looking at a subset of that machine learning, of deep learning, and moving into that generative AI that Jim is kind of alluding to when we talk about AI-led workflow. What we're really referring to there is all of these tasks that that we're doing on a daily basis, and that that whole transition that Jim talked about with autonomous driving and that Waymo experience that I had. Again, I had no idea where anything was in San Francisco, but I can just plug in where I want to go, and then Waymo will take the best possible route based on traffic, based on all of the different factors that are put in to the algorithm, and based on a workflow. And that's where we're talking about here, is based on a series of looking at all of these aggregated data points. We want the system to make a decision-based workflow for us. And again, given all of this data and information, we really want to make sure that we're looking. And let's take, for example, an example of predictive maintenance. So again, there's so many data points. And for those of you in the transportation industry, everything from reefers to tractors, all of these have different CAN bus data and all of these different data monitoring. But we can start looking at that and we can start leveraging that. And imagine this scenario where the AI monitoring has, predicted when a maintenance is needed based on a fault code. Again, being able to look at this and find anomalies in that data that's coming from that canvas to, kind of try and prevent some unexpected downtime for that. But as part of that, which we can again do some of that today, but as part of that, taking that to the next step and moving into, as soon as that as soon as that piece of equipment recognizes a fault, it will automatically generate a service order in the asset maintenance system, which then initiates an automated workflow, notifying a cross-functional team. So again, typically, if I'm looking at it from a distribution standpoint, if I have an asset that's out, I'm usually having to go into multiple systems and contact people and letting them know. But now we can automate that notification across functional teams. We can identify shops that are available for the maintenance. We can look at resource availability as well as parts, kind of automate which shop is selected to have that maintenance completed. We can start doing things like scheduling the maintenance and optimizing. And now that we have interconnected and cross-functional data, now we automatically see that in the TMS, that piece of equipment's not available. So the optimization of those orders now take that into consideration, and those assets are updated. Now, then we can start thinking about, dispatching and, based on those available resources. And then once the actual, the maintenance is completed, it'll automate the post-maintenance quality checks, generating of reports and sending those updates out, letting people know that that equipment is back in service. And that cycle then just continues from a predictive monitoring standpoint. So by taking over those, routine tasks and coordinating all these steps, that AI-led workflow ensures that the, kind of operations are efficient, downtime's minimized, and that, human teams can really focus on their strategic work. So it all goes back to challenges. And, again, when we were talking about, how we can really leverage all of that information that's in there, it really comes back to, mitigating those challenges as we see them day in and day out. And that's where we're going with the AI and the TMS.
Yeah, that's a great example, Chris. I appreciate you working through that. And as you mentioned, there's a number of areas that this is going to be applicable. We just touched on asset maintenance, which is just one piece of a big TMS cog, right? So
absolutely,
that kind of wraps things up, Bob, for our presentation.
Let's take us to that panel discussion slide, shall we? There we go. Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen, very much for that presentation. That really gives us a good level set to understand, get a basic idea of where AI is these days with respect to TMS. I now have the privilege of asking both Jim and Chris some questions in our panel portion of our presentation. But even as I am doing that, audience, please remember, you will have the opportunity to ask questions at the end. So please submit your questions throughout this presentation by clicking on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now, guys, maybe I'll start with you, Jim. I want to ask you a little bit more about AI assist and AI task execution, and because I hear words coming from you guys like Chris is saying, like it helps to make decisions as opposed to it makes decisions. I hear you saying things like split-second decisions. Now, we talk a lot in these days about analytics mutating into this idea of prescriptive analytics, where it actually takes the action for you. When it comes to AI and TMS and these two parts of it, assist and execution, describe to me exactly what is the relationship of the machine to humans. And is it recommending a decision, and then the person follows up on it? Are we letting it make that decision and just monitoring it? Are we just sitting back and doing nothing? Jim, what's going on?
Yeah, so really at the end of the day, Bob, every TMS technology company is going to take a different approach, right? Our approach is we feel that the different AI models and agents that are used to interact, as you described, to predict and automate decision making and execute tasks, they're just not quite mature enough. They don't know enough just yet about how to react and do that automatically for the human. So we're firm believers that that's going to be a human AI interaction. And we think of it this way, that AI and human together is better than the individual parts. And it will be that way for a while. But really one area comes to mind, and that's with fleet operators. And if you really think about that, that could be a distribution company, it could be an LTL or truckload carrier. And really their goal every day is to generate or create optimal routes, right? And then they go off and they execute those routes. while they're doing that, the TMS captures all the real-time data of what's happening, and it compares that to the plan, and it's learning. These AI models are learning at that point. From here, what AI is going to do is it's going to look at all this real-time data, plus a lot of the historic, the information that has happened from the past, from past routes that drivers have performed. And it's going to provide insights into different optimization parameters that a user should consider changing, right? And it could be a change in the day. It could be a change for future days based on what those learnings are. And those could be things like average stop time at a location, the corrected lat long of where I should enter a customer's premises, even the the kind of the common arrival and depart times that or appointment windows that I'm seeing when I get to these customers. And really the end goal is, by changing these data points, it's going to lead to a better plan going forward. And where AI comes in, it could even automate these changes as those models and those agents get more intelligent.
Including the ability, I assume, to replan on the fly.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
if something's gone wrong, the AI engine has to be able to immediately reroute.
Yes.
Whether it's a driver, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's this or that.
Weather, traffic, you name
anything.
Right? Yeah.
Interesting. Thanks. Okay, so Chris, in what areas has AI up to now caused the most significant disruption? And I think I'm using disruption in a positive sense here because it can carry two different meanings.
You are correct.
In transportation management overall.
Yeah, you're right, Bob. And yeah, I mean, disruption is in the positive light here because, gosh, there's so many things and there's so many ways because look, they change so rapidly. It really is transforming kind of operational efficiencies, customer experiences today. And now I'm going to focus on the operational efficiencies, right? So as a lot of folks know that, hopefully I'm not making an assumption, but, when in the transportation world, historically, a lot of these things have been such a manual process, and having to match up so many different data points and information from multiple sources. And it's really allowed companies to leverage AI to rethink the kind of traditional freight matching process. So if we take an operational, efficiency around freight matching, which is, obviously a big challenge for a lot of different companies. I mean, and again, I may be a little biased. My first job was in logistics as a broker at a 3PL, but the automation of this carrier selection based on, a multitude of criteria like delivery times, route preferences, pricing, capacity, even a carrier scoring based on multiple data points that are coming in from everything from, a TMS all the way through to an ELD or some sort of tracking provider. Again, all of this is based on, on-time performance or other metrics that come from those carriers. So, again, it's made that process so much more accurate, and it's kind of disrupted that whole process of, hey, freight matching, and I'm going to go with the cheapest carrier, or I'm going to go with, based on just this one or two data points. Now we've got a much more augmented view of what that freight matching looks like. And it's leading to so much more kind of operational efficiencies for those customers today.
For sure. Yep.
So we are, bottom line, in the end, seeing an actual increase in productivity, because there's always this controversy as to whether technology actually boosts productivity or not. It sounds like you're making a real value case that it does.
Absolutely. I mean, without a doubt. And again, I think customers are seeing this as well. I mean, I think they're seeing lead time, narrow down because, again, with all of the data points we have in place, we're able to have much better visibility of capacity. We're able to see where we're running empty. We're able to see where we can, kind of move things around and leverage a lot of that data from that freight matching standpoint in real time, as we talked about.
That's
interesting.
Right.
Well, Chris, we've said here the machine is learning. It's called machine learning for a reason. AI is learning. But what about we people in deploying these AI solutions in transportation management? What are we learning? What key insights that you've seen have come up so far from deploying AI solutions in the transportation management sector?
Yeah, again, if we're talking about, kind of those key insights and lessons learned from deploying some of those AI solutions, look, Bob, it all starts with the data, right? Data is the most crucial piece to the AI learning model. High quality data and complete data, are essential for some of these accurate insights, right? So when we're looking at and talking about some of these lessons learned, I would really try and make sure that everyone is looking at investing in technology that assists with data cleanup, with making sure that that data model and that data that's out there is and partner. This is a partnership between companies. Again, find a partner that is going to kind of walk with you hand in hand, to make sure that that data quality is there. The other thing I would say, Bob, is integrations are also key, right? A lot of this data is coming from multiple sources. Having an interconnected system is going to allow the AI algorithms and that learning model to analyze a really comprehensive picture and optimize operations more effectively, right? So making sure that, again, and I know Jim touched on this a little bit, but when you're looking at different companies, or if you're looking at kind of leveraging AI, the lessons we've learned from deploying these systems is, the keys are data and your partners that you're integrating with.
Yeah, Chris, I'll add one point to that, just real brief. I mentioned, Bob, earlier that we, Aptean, took on these technologies internal to improve our internal processes to provide a better experience to our customers, right? And in doing so, we started with our customer success team, or help desk, if you will. And the normal process: a ticket gets input, right? A person responds to that ticket and then resolves that ticket and solves customer's problem.
Well, you like to think that's how it works.
Yeah, right.
You would like to.
Yeah, I didn't say how long it's going to take, but really, at the end of the day, we've invoked AI to help us through this. And just from the initial launch, we've seen already a 32% increase in reduction of time to close tickets. And as those AI models get smarter, it's going to happen even faster.
Well, that's interesting, Jim, because you're saying we've been a lot of what we've been talking about here. The promise of AI has been an improvement in internal operations. So you're saying that it really does extend to the customer experience. Customers recognize that you're using AI. And bottom line, better service to them, right?
Absolutely, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want, I can kind of talk a little bit about that, more about
Please do.
the customer experience and the engagement and how AI will influence that. But really, I believe there's a number of areas where the customer experience is going to be improved. But if I go back to that car, that self-driving car, right? It senses the road, knows when to stop, it takes action, right? That's really how AI is going to improve the customer experience. And here's a couple areas, or a few areas, that we think is important. One is personalized delivery option. The second is real-time tracking and visibility. And then thirdly, automated customer service. So when thinking of those, starting at the last, automated customer service, there's chatbots out there. Those chatbots can handle routine customer inquiries, such as shipment status notifications, appointment time changes, or even billing issues. And unlike today, like I referred to, having to call the help desk or the customer success team to ask for this information. And again, not always are they going to be there at the ready to answer those questions on my time. Think about a chatbot sitting there at the ready, 24/7, ready to provide support anywhere, anytime, upon my convenience. That's one huge experience improvement for the customer. And then secondly, I'll just briefly talk about real-time tracking. We've all talked about this. Has all been happening for some time now, right? People are linking tracking systems or telematics data or ELD data into the involvement of their shipments or their delivery fleet, whichever the case may be. And really, AI can provide customers with live updates proactively versus them having to search for it or ask for it. That could be a shipment status, simply that. This could include the location of the fleet truck or the carrier, updated ETAs, all the while considering the things that we don't know, the unexpected events or the anomalies that just come about in a day. We talked about this already, but weather, traffic, all those events that could happen that will influence the experience of a customer. And really, when you provide this type of transparency, it just builds trust within the customer that you're a communicative partner and you believe in their success and you are actively communicating with them.
Jim, speaking as a resident of San Francisco who cannot set foot outside his door without seeing a Waymo vehicle zip by, and yet has never set foot in one yet.
Yeah.
I'm still a little nervous. Is AI, in your estimation, when it comes to TMS, is it a set it and forget it technology? Can it do that, or how much human oversight do we still really need?
Yeah, I mean that really is a grand question, right? And my answer is no, it's not set it and forget it. I like to rephrase that as it's really a set it and then allow it to get smarter and learn and then adapt technology, right? So as businesses grow, as they change, as the market conditions change, whatever those changes are, the AI models that we use also need to change and reflect this, right? And really, when you think about continuous improvement, this is just continuous improvement in a different version. It's continuous learning and continuous improvement, all embedded within AI.
That's a great way to put it. Thank you. So I want to ask you, rounding out the panel portion of our discussion here, I want to ask both of you this question. Babe, bottom line, what should companies be looking for in transportation management solutions that leverage AI? Jim, you want to start with that? Or Chris, you want to start with that? And then we'll go to Jim.
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay.
Look, the first and foremost, look, as we kind of talked about before, and Jim alluded to it, and we were talking about how, and I kind of mentioned it a little bit around, finding a partner, right? A partner within, a TMS solution is really a company that's already leveraging AI within their own organization, right? And we've got experience firsthand implementing AI strategies. We've kind of hit the bumps in the road and figured out, where we needed to retrain models and do different things internally, running our own processes. Second, focus on, the practical use cases that you're looking to boost those efficiencies and kind of reduce the operational costs. And really make sure those solutions include features like dynamic route optimization, automated freight matching, end-to-end shipment visibility. So all of those kind of AI-driven load optimization. So all of those AI-driven features that are really going to boost your efficiency and kind of really focus on those cases that we kind of highlighted at the beginning of the presentation. All of those are going to allow for the enhanced productivity and reduce costs that everyone's looking for, providing customer service, which I imagine is what you're all looking for at the end of the day.
Sure.
Yeah, and if I was to add to that, Bob, just real quickly to summarize what Chris said, right, in a different way, it's how will a TMS help me automate what I do today, but in an efficient way and in a way that I'm confident that it's making the right choices. And companies that have tested this are the ones you should partner with.
Okay, thanks, gentlemen, for that. I want to bring the audience into our discussion now. This will be the audience question and answer portion of our presentation. And even as we are answering the questions that have already come in, audience members are encouraged to keep on submitting your questions by clicking on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. And then we'll get to as many of those questions as we can, time permitting. So let me ask Jim, I think I'll give this one to Chris. How can AI be used to identify patterns in shipment data that can help optimize logistics processes? I like that question because we are pattern-seeking brains. AI has to mimic that. Talk about that, Chris.
We are, and that is 100% correct. We are pattern-seeking brains, and again, coming from someone that's been in TMS logistics, having a degree in logistics, everything's about a pattern. Everything's a puzzle to me, right? So,
Mhm.
and for, from shipment data, there's so much that we can analyze to impact that day-to-day optimization, right? We could be looking at inbound logistics, from a demand forecasting, leveraging AI to analyze historical shipment data, market trends, seasonal fluctuation. We could be looking at supplier performance, how evaluating, analyzing delivery times, quality of goods sold, compliance and contracts. So there's a number of, from different, aspects of that shipment data, taking it all the way through to outbound logistics as well. I mean, we've touched a little bit upon route optimization earlier, analyzing those traffic patterns, weather, and all of those things that we touched upon to make the most effective sequence in the route for that driver. All the way through to customer behavior analysis, analyzing, when a customer orders and those patterns and preferences, taking all of that data and really analyzing, am I profitable? Am I not profitable? All resulting in kind of that streamlining of the logistics process that we're looking for. But all of those data points is the key, right? So, whether it's inbound, outbound, being able to identify those key patterns is going to be where that model really, really, really thrives.
Yeah. This questioner is asking for elaboration on the notion of route execution. And it's a question I especially like because the whole idea of route optimization execution, it is a brutally complex problem that is well beyond the ability of the human brains to really tackle, the so-called salesman problem of how do you route perfectly, going to all these different places. What's the most optimized way of doing it? Anyway, this questioner wants to ask how AI enhances that. Jim?
Yeah, great. Thank you. And again, that's a really good question and one we've lived with some time, as you say, Bob. I don't mean to be repetitive here, but if you really think about it, for years now, right? Companies have been optimizing their routes. They've been linking that to ELD, telematic GPS data, and this allows them to track the execution of the route. But more importantly, it allows them to proactively manage exceptions as they come about in the day. So the old Adam of be proactive versus reactive, right? What AI is going to do, it's going to take this to the next level. And again, as I've said, it's going to analyze the data. It's going to link it with live traffic and weather. It will compare it to all that historic pattern data that we just talked about, right? To look at historic travel times, historic stop times, and it's going to provide insights to the user. So again, back to the user AI combination, right? To help them decide what to change or how to react to that data. And AI, you touched on this lightly, Bob, but really AI is going to start to automate in route changes. Yes. It's going to say, based on these conditions, resequence the stops. Don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go 1, 2, 5, 4, 3, because ultimately our goal as an operator is to maximize time window adherence, all the while reducing the mileage I drive and the fuel that I consume, right?
Yeah.
So that's where AI is going to kind of take us. And that's what we see for route execution.
Isn't it funny that the more we talk about technology, the more we want to talk about people? Because this question wants to talk a little bit more about human involvement. And I'd like to frame it in this way. And that is that we've talked about how AI will help make these decisions. But there's a controversy in AI about whether or not AI can or will be able to or should be able to explain its decisions, which will then equip the human with the ability to understand that decision and execute it or not execute it. Jim, where is that? Where are we in the human involvement and the ability to understand what the AI is actually telling us?
Yeah, that actually, I think, is a wonderful question, Bob. Our experience really shows that the current AI models, again, I've said this, they're not quite ready for full automation, right? And using your comments you made about the ability to explain the decisions it made, it will never do that. What it will do is it'll analyze those decisions to say, was it the right decision, and make a better decision going forward. That goes back to that learning and the evolving to change, right? And through all the things we talked about, AI assist, execute, workflow, this will involve humans for years to come. And as these models get smarter, as they're reprogrammed, as they adjust to all these changes, AI is going to do more and more over time.
And as it does more and more, we come to trust it more and more because we know it's
Correct.
learning. It's
Yep.
getting better. So if a so-called black box exists there, we have less of a problem with that going forward.
Right.
Maybe early on we're a little bit leery, but
Yes.
but we get better. Again, this questioner is asking you to elaborate more on this idea of selecting the most cost-effective carrier options based on shipment details, current market conditions. Chris, talk a little bit more about how AI takes all those things into consideration and comes up with the right conclusion.
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, we talked about a lot of those, different data sources and different data points that AI has to consider. And it really is all about that data, right? I mean, when we talk about, specifically data aggregation, AI can leverage, aggregated data from multiple sources like carrier performance data. And again, when we talk about cost-effective carrier options, we're not just talking about it's the best possible truckload carrier. It could be, is it more effective to build this, on an LTL? Is it more effective to run this in a multimodal way, right? So again, being able to take all of that, carrier performance data, historical shipment data, tracking to identify patterns, right? We talked about patterns. That's a key one, and trends on those particular lanes, being able to optimize those, right? So optimization algorithms, is another way, right? So AI can utilize, again, we're kind of talking about a little bit of the same things, but being able to have those algorithms to match a complex matrix of shipment requirements, again, to match with those carrier capabilities, or that mode capability is kind of key there. And traditionally, it's been someone that's been sitting there looking at a screen, analyzing, rates and codes, and it's a very complex matrix. And, again, AI through all of that data, again, split second, being able to identify the best mode for that transportation to meet those deadlines.
This questioner wants you to talk more about AI's ability to monitor shipment tracking data for the purposes of detecting potential delays, anomalies, to trigger proactive alerts. We talked about that a little bit, but can you say how it employs that data to that purpose, Jim?
Yeah. So as I mentioned previously, in my responses, AI does do this. It monitors both inbound and outbound shipments. It monitors fleet and the deliveries associated with either type of transport, and it identifies those delays. So again, the car, it monitors, it detects, and acts, right? These agents or the models, they're going to do this analysis and take this data and make decisions. And those could include, simply put, proactive alerting. And again, there's many other actions you would want it to take as well in regards to different trigger points when tracking shipments.
This question would like you to say a little bit more about the way that AI or ML is taking over the vital role of cybersecurity. Of course, the more you rely on technology, the more you open yourself up to the possibility of that technology being hacked or attacked. Is this AI engine that we're talking about when it comes to TMS, is it safe? Is it secure?
Yeah. Chris, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. Look, through, when we talk about looking at cybersecurity and we talk about the safety of AI, as we mentioned before, AI is an augmented way that we can leverage a lot of this data and still have hands-on to be able to, it's up to us to be that gatekeeper, right? So through a lot of different, again, whether it's SOC 2 Type 2 compliance, penetration testing, making sure that we do make all the right decisions with regards to data integrity. We've got to make sure we, abide by all of the different, letter of the law when we're running these models.
That's right.
All of this, all of that, it's up to us to put kind of those gatekeeping parameters in place to make sure we're following those rules and that integrity is there with regards to that data that we're leveraging, those models that it churns out. So, again, we're early days, and I would say, the models that we're training today, there's been a lot of thought that go into cybersecurity and data integrity and compliance with regard to making sure that all of those sort of key gatekeeping things that we're doing within our SOC 2 Type 2 and HIPAA compliance and all of those things are being maintained.
Yeah. Really, as a good corporate citizen, Bob, when you think about cloud offerings, everyone talks about cloud offerings, right? It is imperative as a, us as a technology provider to be a good corporate citizen to do all the things Chris just mentioned. Talking about HIPAA data, talking about GDRP, all the things, SOC 2, SOC 1 compliance. That is our responsibility as a provider to make sure that when we release AI, it is following all the legislation and the compliance.
Fantastic. Thank you both for your answers and for your presentation. Unfortunately, we are just about out of time. We have time for one final question. I'm going to direct it to Jim.
Okay.
Jim, what is the one thing that you want our listeners to take away from today's presentation, and what should they do about it?
Okay, great question. I think the biggest takeaway is AI is here. It's here to stay and it's real. So embrace it, right? That is the biggest takeaway. And then secondly, I would challenge you to kind of research it and understand it and embrace it. Like I mentioned, understand the capability of AI, but also talk to your TMS providers, your partners, to understand their approach to integrating AI. And if they've done that, how they've done it. If they don't have a good answer, that's kind of a red flag, right? And then really to remain competitive in today's market, there's so many challenges. It's key to partner with a TMS provider that's already tested this, implemented AI in their own business practices, like I mentioned earlier, and then now into their solutions that they're offering to the market. And lastly, just to wrap it up, what is AI really going to do for you? It's going to help you work smarter and faster, make better decisions, which ultimately improve margins, right? It helps prepare you for growth by doing more with the same resources or potentially less resources. And it also improves your customer experience and brand loyalty. That's the things I would say to that question.
Well, frankly, there's been a lot of controversy recently about the true value proposition of AI in so many parts of our lives. But I think the two of you have done a fantastic job in making the case for AI is extremely critical in the whole world of TMS transportation management. So I want to thank you, Jim Endres and Chris Peel, for that fantastic presentation, as well as our audience for their participation and their great questions too. There is an email, info@aptean.com, if you want to reach out to these guys for more information. And I'm sure you do, because we have only just scratched the surface, but thanks again for that. That's how you can reach them. Also, we have an asset for you. Just before we leave, we've got a new industry expert ebook for you. How to optimize every mile and overcome today's shipping challenges from Aptean. You can take a quick shot of that QR code right now, or if you don't have time to get your camera ready in this last few seconds of our webinar, don't worry about it. This information will be sent to all attendees of this webinar upon its conclusion, which is right now. Thanks again, guys. Really enjoyed it. Very educational hour. Thank you, audience. Everybody, have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.